At some point in your life, you've probably had a desire to become a professional athlete. It's a great life, right? The money, the fame, the fortune, playing the sport you love and making a living doing it. Life would be perfect, right?
Being an athlete in general, I think, is it's a really amazing experience, but it's a really gluttonous existence. It's very self-serving. You know, you are the only one promoting yourself, benefiting from this. You know, you're talking about yourself. You're having all these amazing life experiences, but it's all about you. And that's, to me, that seemed like a really wasted opportunity.
Don't worry, it wasn't wasted.
The day I decided that I was going to teach people with cancer how to kayak for free, and I was going to start a nonprofit.
This podcast is supported by the DeLorme InReach Explorer, the world's only satellite communicator with built-in navigation. Send and receive text messages, create waypoints, and find your way back from anywhere in the world. There's not much time to get $35 off of your purchase. Go to inreachdelorme.com and use the code Meister at checkout. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of MTNmeister. Today we welcome Brad Ludden, who's a professional kayaker. He began traveling internationally at the ripe age of 12 and has completed over 100 first descents. What's that number? Do you have an exact number now, Brad?
No, I think it's... I like to just round it out to 100 because that makes me feel cool.
First Descents is also the name of the nonprofit he founded in 1999 to offer young adult cancer fighters a free outdoor experience to reclaim their lives and connect with others who are doing the same. However, Brad, we're going to start our conversation today with maybe your most prestigious accolade. It's Cosmopolitan Magazine's hottest bachelor in America in 2008.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Thanks, I think.
How does one become a Cosmo Bachelor of the Year?
Oh, I think it's just bad luck, really. It was actually a pretty entertaining process. So an acquaintance, a friend, someone I'd worked with on a media campaign, actually, nominated me for this. Unbeknownst to me, I had no idea this was happening. And so one day, out of the blue, I get a call from a New York number, which isn't too uncommon, you know, when you're in sort of the athlete media business. Mm-hmm. And I answered, "Hello, this is Brad." And they said, "Hello, this is Cosmo Magazine, and we're calling to notify you that we've chosen you as Colorado's hottest bachelor." And I mean, if you know anything about kayaking, you know that it's like a really great group of friends who always play jokes on one another. And so immediately I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm not falling for this one, boys. Like, who is it? Who put you up to this? And Cosmo was just like, "Excuse us? Like, sorry, I don't understand. Why are you saying that?" And I was like, who? No, really? Who? And so this went on for like 5 minutes until finally they were like, "We don't know how else to tell you this. Like, this is really us and this is true." Anyway, so I was like, wow, this is awkward. I'm so sorry. I thought it was a joke. How did this happen? They told me the whole story. And then I had to fly out and do this photo shoot in LA, which was equally entertaining and embarrassing. Certainly not something I would have chosen to do. And then fast forward a couple of months to that fall, and they flew us all to New York and did this whole media blitz around it. And, you know, we were on the Today Show, and some of the guys were like doing push-ups, and I was like, oh my God, if any of my friends see this, I'm like, this is just awful. And sure enough, they pick one bachelor that can win the whole thing and wins $10,000. And I had found out about that in California at the photo shoot. And I was like, man, this was when First Descents was still in its infancy somewhat. It was still growing. Our annual budget at that time was a couple $100,000. And I was like, 10 grand is actually a big number. And I was like, if I could win this thing, I could donate that money to the charity, and it could be a good thing. And so I sent out an email saying as much. And I sent it to 100 people that I knew, just saying, "Hey guys, like, this is really embarrassing. Please don't judge me, but I need your vote for this thing. because I want to donate the money to First Descents. And the email went viral.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like almost like to the point of being bad. And so anyway, sure enough, they ended up picking me. I won this whole thing. And then the next day I was like back on the Today Show. And so the thing kind of blew up in my face in both good and bad ways.
Right.
It got a little bigger than I had hoped it would, but for a good reason. And so it's kind of it's like a tattoo that you get when you're 18, it's like, well, it was a good idea at the time. So but it doesn't go away. And so it still follows me everywhere. I mean,
you're talking about it now.
Yeah, exactly. Here we are talking about it some 7 years later.
It's funny. This actually is my first run-in with the Cosmo Bachelor of the Year contest. My current roommate was named New Hampshire's most eligible bachelor, or whatever the terminology is, but he didn't win the national competition. But his story is very similar to yours. One of our mutual friends secretly nominated him for this, and he just went through with it. Anyway, for the listeners, we're going to have Brad's picture plastered all over our website on his Meister profile page. Maybe that'll increase our web traffic, Brad.
Or decrease. It depends on your audience, I suppose. But yeah, it's funny. After being nominated for this whole thing, it's more common than I had thought. I have a few friends who have been through this. And so that I guess misery loves company to some extent, made me feel a little better.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm sure we could actually talk about this for the entire interview.
I'll have plenty of stories.
That's for a different podcast. So you are a professional kayaker. I asked you, how does one become a Cosmo Bachelor of the Year? Now, how does one become a professional kayaker? Let's start with your childhood.
Oh boy. Well, yeah, I think professional kayaker, people, every time I say that, people are like, does that really exist? And to the extent that we believe it does, yes, it exists. For me, I started kayaking when I was 9 years old. My mom actually, and it's important to say that, my mom started kayaking first. She loves the water. And really wanted to find something here in Northwest Montana that she could do out on the water, and she discovered whitewater kayaking. And I think my dad felt really emasculated by that. So it lasted like 3 months of her doing it on her own before he was like, okay, I got to do it too. And so then they became the weekend warriors. Every weekend the family would pack up, get all the kayaks, all the gear in our tents, and head to some river, usually in like northern Idaho or even up in BC. And we'd camp out, and my parents would kayak, and my sister and I would cruise along and watch. And 3 years later, when I was 9, my sister was 11. She's my only other sibling. My parents decided it was time that we join them on the water, and so they bought us our own kayaks, and there began sort of my interaction with the sport. The first 2 years were kind of more of a hate relationship than a love relationship. I was really, really afraid of kayaking, and I just remember, like, every time we'd go out, I'd just start crying, and then I'd make my parents take me out of the water.
That's really surprising to hear, given the videos that I've seen of you.
Well, yeah, there was a turning point. Fortunately, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was still really scared on the water, but it was more of an enjoyable feeling later in my life. So back then, I actually quit kayaking. When I was 11 years old, I was like, I just can't keep doing this. And my parents were like, that's fine, you don't have to. But my sister went on to keep kayaking, and there again, I became really jealous. I was like, man, she's getting all this attention. Everyone's like sitting around the campfire at the end of the day talking about how great she did, and like no one even noticed me. And so my ego was like, that's it, Brad, get back in the kayak. And sure enough, that year I kind of fell in love with it. I actually went down to Chile when I was 12 years old to train slalom kayaking, and that was my first international trip. And on that trip, I remember the day actually that I fell in love with the sport. It went from being something I was afraid of to something I enjoyed doing. And that, in my mind, was really the beginning of my kayaking career, so to speak.
What was so special about that day?
I was with a buddy of mine, Trent Long. He and his family own Cascade Raft Company in Idaho on the Payette Rivers. And he was like a legend of our sport. He was the same age as me. He was just really, really good at kayaking. And he saw that I was really struggling, with the fear of kayaking. And so he said, hey, Brad, he pulled me aside. And again, I'll never forget this. He said, you're going to follow me down this section of river, which was harder than anything I'd done to that point. And he said, every stroke I take, you're going to take. Everything I do, you're going to do. You will stay right behind me and do exactly as I do. And that act made me feel kind of like safe. And it also like opened my eyes to like how to confidently kayak down something. And I was like, oh, this is it. Okay, now I get it. And it was literally like, from that point on, there was just no turning back. All I wanted to do all day, every day was kayak. I mean, like skipping school, any chance I got on the weekends, like loading up cars, finding friends. I would like call all of anyone that knew how to kayak and had a car when I still couldn't drive. And I was like, hey, you don't know me and I'm little, but I promise I can do this. Like, can I come with you on this trip? And they were just like, what, who is this? So anyway, I would stop at nothing to kayak. And I think somewhere along the way that turned into a profession simply by way of the fact that like I'd become, relatively good at it. I was this young kid out there doing it a lot. And I think sponsors were like, oh, we should get our gear on him. We should start, hooking up this kid with our products. And so it just sort of like gradually blossomed into this profession where, one day I stopped and looked around and I was like, wow, this is my job. And I was really happy about it.
God, that's so neat to love something so much. Do you still feel that love for it like you do as a child? Or I don't know. I mean, I would be okay if you said that you don't love it as much as you used to. I don't know. What does it feel like to love something that much?
It was, when you're a teenager, your early 20s, like the world, at least from where I sit today, it was a simpler place, a simpler time. I mean, I had very little, zero responsibilities. I didn't care about owning anything, a home or a car or otherwise. And so I had no debt. All I wanted to do was paddle. And so there was sort of this blissful time in my life when like the only thing I had to do every day when I woke up was kayak. Yeah. And I unfortunately, like, it was kind of wasted on me because I didn't realize how good that was, but I did enjoy it. And so, to say I still love the sport, there's no question. I think I look at it very differently. I appreciate it for different reasons. But I still, like, when I get on the water, I still become this child at heart. I'm very playful. I just start goofing off and laughing. And, once I'm on the river, everything else fades away and that passion does come back. When you do a sport, I think any extreme sport or adventure sport to that level, when you get to that sort of like dangerous point, there's a small window in time that you can sustain that. And as soon as you can't sustain that anymore, you have to learn to love the sport differently. Just because you can't go out every single day and run a first descent in a remote part of the world that is, incredibly dangerous. Like, yeah. So your passion doesn't have to fade or go away. It just has to kind of sort of rechannel a little bit. And so that's what I found myself doing with kayaking. So I wouldn't say I love it less. I just love it differently.
I was listening to a talk that you gave, and I found it really interesting when you talked about your parents and how much freedom they gave you as a child. And you left home at the age of 13 to pursue this life. Can you talk a little bit about, as a child, how important that was to be given that freedom?
Yeah, again, one of those things I think only really came to light in hindsight for me. At the time, my parents, they sent me off on a week-long retreat, actually in the Colorado Rockies, with like 7 other boys my age. I always describe it as like Lord of the Flies. We were, it was like free reign out there. We were like literally there to discover ourselves and to become men, so to speak. And we didn't know as much at the time. We were just like, wow, this is we can do anything. This is unreal. Like, I mean, running through the mountains, for hours on end, and just like, it was crazy. So I came back from that trip and my parents sat me down and said, what'd you think? And I said, wow, it was unbelievable. I had the time of my life. And they were like, what do you think it means for you? And I said, well, I mean, as much as I can tell, I'm supposed to be an adult now. And they said, exactly. You're an adult now. At 13 years old, you are in charge of your own life now. You can make all of your own decisions, but you have to be responsible for any of the consequences that come with those decisions. And the only rule is that, the only financial support in any capacity that you'll receive from us is if you're in school. So, we'll provide minimal living assistance if you're pursuing education. If you drop out of school tomorrow, that's fine, but you're on your own. And so those were kind of the rules. For me, as soon as someone told me I was an adult at 13, I immediately was like, sweet, I'm going to drop out of traditional school. I'm going to join a kayak academy. And I'm going to kayak nonstop. And I remember both my parents kind of going, well, wait a minute. I'm not sure. That's not exactly what we were going for. But that's what I did. And they couldn't say no because they just told me I could do anything. And so that's what I did. I dropped out of a traditional public school, joined what at the time was called Adventure Quest Kayak Academy, and started traveling around the world kayaking. And in my summers, I would spend what little money I'd, either saved up and or made from small sponsorships or earned as a kayak safety boater. And I would travel to places I'd always wanted to go. I did the European Teva tour in 1998 and spent some time in Africa and places like that. And just, I was like, if I can do anything, the thing I want to do is kayak. And that's what I did.
Coming up on MTNmeister.
I literally for, I want to say 10, 12 years of my life, I was on the road kayaking at least 300 days a year. I kayaked almost every single day.
MTNmeister is supported by, you guessed it, the DeLorme InReach Explorer. It's the world's only satellite communicator with built-in navigation. With the InReach Explorer, you can send and receive messages, drop waypoints, plan routes, and share your journey from anywhere in the world. But its other features are what makes the InReach not only a navigation device, but also a survival kit. During emergency situations, you can trigger an SOS and interact with DeLorme's 24/7 Search and Rescue Monitoring Center. For $35 off of your purchase, and there's not much time left, visit inreachdelorme.com and use the code Meister at checkout. And now, back to the show. So this is kind of interesting. It ended up working out for you, but I'm sure that there are other people out there who tried to pursue this, but it didn't work out, and not just in kayaking, in many other sports. But we don't normally hear those stories. What do you think separated you? Why were you able to make this work when others aren't able to?
Oh, man. I think it's a number of things. I think it's a lot of luck again. Mm-hmm. I think I was at the right place at the right time. My parents had opened me up to so many opportunities. I'd met so many amazing kayakers that did live around the world. So I had these places to go, and that kind of springboarded me into the limelight a little bit, because in paddling with these people around the world, I was getting in these films, and that, one thing led to another. It was like the snowball. I think without trying to sound arrogant, I had a bit of a physical knack for it. Mm-hmm. That coupled with the fact that my parents, especially in that time, started me really young. At 9 years old, there were probably 3 or 4 other kayakers in the country at that age paddling, like Andrew Holcomb, Rusty Sage, a couple others that also became professional kayak athletes for a time. And so I think, again, the perfect storm, that the fact that my parents at 13 empowered me to make my own decisions. Mm-hmm. And those decisions for me were to pursue the sport of kayaking, which, again, I got to jump on it. And so, I think they afforded me some amazing opportunities. I made some really lucky decisions, and I was at the right place at the right time, and all of those things sort of worked out well. I think the other thing was that I was really unrelenting. Mm-hmm. I wasn't willing to give up. I wasn't willing to say no. I wasn't willing to sacrifice any opportunities to be kayaking. And I also didn't have my mind set on becoming a professional athlete. So there was no failure. I was really just present. I just wanted to go have these amazing kayak adventures. And I always thought that I would end up in college, and then I would get a normal job, and kayaking would fade a little bit in my life and become the weekend warrior that, my parents were. Yeah. And that's fine. But so I guess part of it was just that I had no expectations, and so I couldn't fail. And then one day, like I said, I woke up and I was like a Nike sponsored athlete and traveling 300 days a year and getting paid for it. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. Didn't see that coming.
You said luck there. I say this thing about luck sometimes is luck is a function of the number of times you give yourself to be lucky. So, you can be open to opportunities, and then hopefully eventually luck will come your way. It sounds like that applies to you. You were open to these opportunities and you went after them when they were there.
Yeah. No, Sure. That's a great way to look at luck, and I wouldn't argue that or disagree with it at all. I think it's, if you gamble enough times, you're going to win and or lose, like you just have to put yourself out there enough to give yourself the opportunity to succeed. And I think, I literally for, I want to say 10, 12 years of my life, I was on the road kayaking at least 300 days a year. I kayaked almost every single day. The only days I didn't kayak were when I was traveling to a river to go kayaking. So if you look at it that way, it's like, kind of hard not to become a professional kayak athlete.
So I want to talk about first descents now. You were 18 years old when you started this?
I was, yeah. Which, it's funny, like everyone's always kind of pointed that out to me, and literally until this year, for some reason, it didn't sink in that was even remotely different or weird.
You had your adulthood start a little earlier, I guess, than some others. So maybe that was part of it. But still, 18 years old, that is young.
It is young. It's funny though. I think it almost worked in my favor because now, being a bit more jaded and experienced, and if someone, if someone was like, "Hey, Brad, you should start a kayak, camp for young adults with cancer and make it a nonprofit and pay for everything for them," I'd be like, "Are you out of your mind? Like, no, there's no way that'll work. That's crazy." But when I was 18, I was just like, "Oh, this is absolutely the right thing to do, and I'll find a way to make it work." I was just, almost naive to the point of it succeeding. Like I was just like, "There's no way it can't work. I believe in it so much. I'm so passionate about it, and I'll figure out all the things I don't know."
That's exactly. No, that makes perfect sense. And a lot of times, like coming in with that motivated, fresh perspective, it works. Why did you want to do it at such a young age? Like, what inspired you to start a nonprofit?
It was again kind of the perfect storm. It was a number of things. For me, I was 18 years old. I was at this crossroads in my life of. I just picked up a Nike sponsorship, and I was I'd also simultaneously been accepted to college. And so I was staring down this crossroads of like, okay, which route path do I choose here? And I thought long and hard about that. It wasn't an easy decision for me. And I ended up ultimately, obviously, choosing whitewater kayaking as a profession over attending college. Just thinking, college will always be there, but this opportunity with kayaking will not. So I just couldn't turn my back on it. And that was the rational reason. Of course, there was just no stopping me. I just wanted to paddle. So, but with that decision, I recognized too that, kayaking, not even kayaking, being an athlete in general, I think is, it's a really amazing experience, but it's a really gluttonous existence. It's very self-serving. You are the only one promoting yourself, benefiting from this. You're talking about yourself. You're having all these amazing life experiences, but it's all about you. And to me, that seemed like a really wasted opportunity. Here I was, with sponsors, with access to all these people and these rivers and these outfitters and all this gear. And I was really in a position to give that experience of kayaking that had been so transformative to me and so important to me to someone else who I thought, could benefit a lot more from it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what a cool gift, okay, well, that if I can find a way to give that gift to someone else, then this decision to be a professional athlete will be worth it, mm-hmm. worthwhile. It'll be meaningful. It'll mean that I chose this for a bigger purpose. And so the question of who to give that experience to was a really easy one for me to answer. As soon as I asked myself the question, I had the answer. And the answer was young adults with cancer. And very simply, my aunt had been diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 12 years old, and our family really went through that with her. And it was very eye-opening to me. As a privileged young white male in America, I'd seen very little bad in my life. And so to see someone so close to me that I love so much go through such a hard time, to see how isolated she was and how there just weren't any support services for her outside of our family. And so that always stuck with me. Shortly thereafter, I started volunteering locally at various pediatric oncology programs, teaching kids with cancer actually how to kayak. And that really opened my eyes to this opportunity to give back, seeing how much fun it was for them to be in the boat, seeing how much fun it was for me to be in the water with them. And, being a part of that process was just really eye-opening as well. And so there again, when I asked myself the question of how can I do more with this sport of kayaking, should I choose it as my profession? The answer was very simple: teach people with cancer how to kayak. And that was sort of the very first step or sort of the stake in the sand, that began the journey for First Descents. And it took about 2 years from the day I decided that I was going to teach people with cancer how to kayak for free, and I was going to start a nonprofit, until the first camp we actually hosted in 2001. It was a challenging 2 years to say the least.
And now you're doing more than just paddling, right? You have other sports.
Yeah. So let's see here. In 2008, we did kind of a rock climbing sort of mountaineering program out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it was incredibly successful. For those first 7 or 8 years, we had a lot of participants contacting us, or young adults contact us saying, "Hey, I really want to do this, but I can't kayak, or I don't want to kayak. Do you offer anything else?" And so finally in 2008, we thought, let's try something else. So we did climbing. Had the same exact impact, the same exact effect, so to speak, in that, the participants went into this, had the week, with a lot of distress and maybe some challenges in their life, went through the process of learning to climb, and came out the back end of that week completely transformed. And that's what we had seen with kayaking. So for me, that was a really big aha moment to see like, wow, that, this, we can offer the same experience through various different avenues in the outdoors. So shortly thereafter, we added surfing, same exact experience, same exact results, awesome, powerful experience for these guys. And then we've since added, rock climbing. We've done glacial mountaineering, multi-day rafting and trekking trips, all sorts of stuff all over the world. So it's been really cool to see. And, I think any one of us, listening to this or who is a part of this outdoor movement can relate. Like when we're in the outdoors, there's something amazing that happens. And that's not specific to any one experience. Yeah.
I'm curious, you mentioned being a privileged white male. I'm a white male too. I would say I'm privileged. You are dealing with people who are just unlucky a lot of the times. Cancer is kind of mysterious, and sometimes you can only attribute the way that you got it to being unlucky. I'm wondering, do you ever feel guilty at times? I don't know. I sometimes feel this guilty feeling when I'm talking to somebody who the only reason the way they are is because of bad luck. Do you ever feel that?
That's a really interesting question. And that's what it is bad luck, right? I mean, like, we have so many participants who have never smoked anything, who have never had a single drink of alcohol, who eat incredibly healthy, who get diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic disease. It's like, how did that happen? Yeah. It's bad luck. And it's funny you ask that, because the first program we did, I went into it with that feeling of guilt, right? Like I went into it thinking, I'd had very little interaction with the young adult population. It was just my aunt. And of course, like, that was my aunt. It's a different situation. With these guys, I was like, they don't know me. Here they see this young athlete who is healthy, who's living, this awesome life. And here I am with cancer. And like, all I could think was like, they're going to judge me. They're going to hate me. They're going to be upset with me, and so I did go into that feeling guilty, and that went away within like 10 minutes of being there. I was like, wow, like it just wasn't even an issue. And so I've never really felt it since. I think if anything, for me, it's just been this awareness, this perspective of like, regardless of our circumstances, we all have somewhat of an obligation to live every day we're given. And those days, if anything, I've seen that they can become numbered very quickly. Our health is something that, it's a gift that can be fleeting. And, just this awareness, this perspective that I try to apply to each and every one of my days makes me feel like I'm honoring their process and my process. It's sort of, again, like that perspective I've been given through my interactions with them, it kind of takes away any guilt I might feel, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. We once had a triathlete on the show a while ago who was all about playing the cards that you're dealt. And I think that applies to both the people that are involved with your program trying to play the cards that they're dealt, but also our privileged white males. I mean, you have to live your life. Good answer there.
Yeah.
Let's get a gear recommendation from you, Brad. Every person that comes on the show, at least if I remember to ask them, gives a gear recommendation. And I'll say that we don't always talk about it on this show, but when we do, we prefer that it comes from the 2008 Cosmo Bachelor of the Year.
Wow, of course. My gear recommendation would be to not wear a shirt in public as often as possible. No, I love it. You know, I'm going to give maybe a somewhat unsuspecting gear recommendation, but I've worked in some capacity with Smith sunglasses for a long time, and mostly by choice. Like it's like family over there. They're good friends of mine, and they have this slogan, you know, making great days better. And I really believe that like there's something about a good pair of sunglasses that no matter the circumstances, when you're outside, if you throw on a good pair of sunnies, like things just get a little bit better. And so that's like the one piece of gear. Like if I leave home without a pair of sunglasses, I freak out. I've called Smith and been like, I need some overnighted to this foreign country, like immediately. And they're just like, dude, come on. So I would say a pair of Smith Serpicos. Those are like my go-to. I fly small airplanes and they're like the aviator shade. So I feel like Top Gun when I wear them.
The Smith Serpicos on Brad's Meister profile page on our website, MTNmeister.com. Finally, Brad, we want one more piece of advice from you, and that is who you would like to hear as the next Mountain Meister on this show.
Oh, man. This is such a tough one. You guys have had such an amazing lineup so far that I feel like there's a lot of weight in this suggestion. I'm going to go with Rush Sturgis. He's a dear friend of mine. He's arguably like the best kayaker in the world right now. And I think there's more than meets the eye, so to speak, with that kid. And so I think people could really benefit from hearing him talk on this show. I think just learning more about him, you know, obviously he's like on surface level, he's one of the best paddlers in the world, but there's so much more going on there. And he's such a diverse, talented, kind person. And I just think he has a story to tell that's worth hearing. So that'd be my suggestion. And I hope it happens because I'd love to listen to it.
Great for the listeners. Keep an ear out for Russ on this show on a future episode. Brad, there is a lot of responsibility on the part of the guest who's recommending the future guest. We had somebody recommend Lewis and Clark one time. That would be one of our more prestigious guests on Mountain Meister. Brad Ludden, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed.
I did, Ben. Thank you for having me, man. Such an honor.
For the listeners, you can find out more about First Ascents at firstascents.org. We'll also have highlights of today's episode on our website on Brad's Meister profile page, MTNmeister.com. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Ben.
Hi, all. Hope you enjoyed that episode with Brad Ludden. A lot of fun talking to him. Not sure if you can tell, but I think allergy season has hit Boston, and it's affecting my voice. I'm kind of talking like this. Let's see. What do I need to tell you guys? The marathon's coming up. I'm running the Pittsburgh Marathon on May 3rd, trying to beat my New York time. Feeling good. We'll see. I'll update you on that. Besides that, I think that's everything. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Mountain Meister. Enjoy doing the rest of whatever you do.